is the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, hosted by me, Kelly Donahue-Piro. This show is for growing insurance agencies looking to maximize their biggest investment, their people. Listen to the top agency performance partners clients share their story on how they boosted their performance by executing a plan. Let's head to the show. Hello, everyone. It's Kelly Donahue-Piro here with another Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast. And this one is with Brad Ruben of Archway Computer Systems. And Brad's going to share with us his perspectives on some things that we all need to focus on from a technology perspective. There is no doubt that security requirements have changed. And one of the biggest things we see as frustration when we come into an agency is technology. When it's not working right, it slows down everything. And when your team's running around busy and burned out, two things. One, time lost is time that you're just throwing money away. And two, we all know that hiring is a challenge in an insurance space. You don't want to frustrate your people any more than necessary. So having good working technology or the ability to get help easily is a huge, huge win for your team. So listen to what Brad Ruben from Archway Computer and I talk about how the tech game has changed in insurance and some things every agency needs to be aware of. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, where we're here to talk to agencies that are growing and have the people and process technology challenges. And I'm super excited to have a good friend of mine here today, Brad Ruben, who is the owner, founder of Archway Computer. Is Archway Computers? What's the official title, Brad?
Archway Computer, Inc.
Ooh.
That's for all my legal people out there.
And so Brad helps agencies, and I'll let him tell his story in a second. Brad helps agencies with all the technology and IT needs, which I'm sure your world got really interesting during COVID and probably had a lot of people had their eyes open. So Brad, why don't you just start by letting all of our listeners know how did you come here? How did you get to own Archway?
Well, 36 years ago, when I was 3 years old, obviously.
Clearly.
I was glamorously building computers out of my garage in Reseda, California. I mean, Tom Petty, I think, wrote a song about that. And my best friend's father needed a computer, so I showed up at his office, and he was talking with the insurance rating software company, and we hit it off. And the salesperson put two of my computers in the trunk of his car, and he sold two the first day. I was like, I'm rich.
I'm in business.
I'm rich. So, that insurance agency owner, he's 93 years old now. Yeah, I consider him a good friend, and along with his son. And, that's how I got into it. I always tell people the insurance industry is a little like the mob. You can never leave. So every time
Once you get in, you can't get out.
they bring you back. Yeah.
So that started Archway Computer. Did you have any bumps along the way, or was it really
Yeah. So, we've had so many bumps and ditches and all that sort of stuff. But I sold the company in 2000. I worked for the company for a few years, retired, had some life events, had kids go to college, and said, geez, I ought to probably have an income. And a good friend of mine needed a job, and a Vertifor sales rep came to me and said, hey, Brad, I understand you're back in the IT business. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she said, well, I need you to be. She had been referring business to a company that went out of business.
Oh, okay.
And had some big problems. And so she asked me to get back into business. I thought we would have like a 10 customer local Los Angeles. And now I think we've got 220 independent agencies.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like that David Byrne song, How Did I Get Here? I have no idea. We have, I think, 58 full-time people. support over 5,000 desktops out there.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so how long has Archway officially been in existence?
So we started in 2009, like during the Great Recession, and sort of learned the art of frugality. A lot of much greater companies than ours started in recessions, right? And you learn to not just throw money at problems and stuff like that. And yeah, so started then and have just been growing ever since.
That's great. Well, I'm glad that you could make it here today because I know that there's so many, and I guess when I think of agencies, I think of the ones that are pretty tech forward. I think of the ones that are confused, and I think of the ones that are like in avoidance mode. I'm curious, like, what buckets do you see out there if you were to bucket agents into their technology awareness
Oh boy,
issues?
yeah. So I mean, you get younger agencies where they're pretty tech savvy, and when you don't need to explain the cloud to them. I literally had an older agency owner come to me at a convention. He said, "Well, what if the satellites go down?" He literally thought the cloud was in the clouds. I'm like, "Well, you're out of luck." So then I explained, "No, your data's not actually in a satellite somewhere." Um, so it does run the gamut. I mean, I do find that the agencies that are growing have learned to leverage technology.
Sure.
And I think there is a general level of concern about all the hacking that's going on. I mean, I've been a victim of hacking. My mother's been a victim of hacking. We've had clients. It's bad.
Yeah.
And I think generally across all those areas, you know, the super technical, going to leverage technology to grow their agency, and agencies that are just, you know, they're staying this size forever.
Yeah.
And, you know, technology is just an expense. Across all of them, they do understand, or they're starting to understand just all the cyber threats that are out there.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the first thing. What are the top 3 challenges you see agencies facing on the technology front? And I want this to be kind of a moment where, like, if agencies are listening and maybe they've heard about it, but their agency's not doing it, or maybe you can open some people's eyes of like, hey people, 911, we got to focus on this.
Yeah. So I mean, cybersecurity is first and foremost. I mean, these hackers are 6 times bigger, and that was last year. It's probably grown more, but 6 times bigger than all the narcotics traffic in the world.
Whoa, that's a big number.
It's a huge number, and they're targeting insurance agents because these hackers, they're not dumb.
Right.
And they know the insurance companies are going to pay the ransoms.
Right.
And going back to that sort of, you know, the different buckets of insurance agents, well, it's impossible for an independent insurance agency owner, I don't care if they're Bill Gates, but it's impossible for them to stay cyber secure and compliant. It's just impossible. Even a single man IT operation who's really, really sharp, it's impossible for them to do it as well. It's almost like doctors. So we were talking before the show, Kelly, about that I just came back from Cabo. And you meet lots of people, and I met a foot doctor there. And, you know, you go to general medical school, and then you get really specific into what area of medicine you're going to be in. The same thing has happened to IT. that you could be an IT generalist and sort of know it all, maybe 20 years ago, but now you have to really specialize.
Sure.
And in order to really cover all the security gamut, you have to have all the specializations for email security, for phishing attacks, for antivirus, for backup. I'm naming a very small few of these things.
Right.
You can't be a generalist anymore, and you need a team. And fortunately, we have a team now, a great team. So anyway, back to cybersecurity. Yes, number one. Compliance, number two. Right. If you want an agency that could be put out of business by the government, if you're not complying with your state cyber reg laws, that can happen. And so our suggestion always is follow New York cyber reg laws.
Because they're the worst, right?
They're the worst. And, it's like that song, New York, New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Those cyber reg laws are coming across the country. And we read the cyber reg laws in various states, like North Carolina, just copy pasted language from the New York cyber reg laws. So and if you're doing business in New York, you have to follow those cyber laws.
Right.
So compliance, I think, is number two. And then, we talked about this before, just general computer downtime. I don't think that agencies get this idea of break fix and how bad it is for their agency. Meaning you're waiting for things to break, and then they break, and then you call your IT guy and he loads up the truck and he shows up at your office and he fixes the problem and he leaves. And maybe 5 minutes after he fixed the problem's there again, right? So I think it's really important that you be proactive about your IT. And like with us, we're known as a managed service provider, and there are lots of managed service providers out there. But what we're doing is we're trying to proactively predict when a computer is going to break. And usually computers they start screaming in little bits and bytes. And they say, yeah, this is a problem, and I've just rebooted myself, et cetera.
Right.
And one of these days they reboot themselves and they don't reboot. So we try to catch this stuff before it happens.
That makes sense. I was just at an agency yesterday, and we're doing our time management program, and we talk about technology. And what's sort of always shocking to me is, and I get it, but the other half of me doesn't get it. Like I'm on the fence, because I've done this personally. I think everybody listening has done this. Is something doesn't work from a software perspective, right? We'll just say software, not just a hardware, and you just kind of do the workaround on it. Like maybe your printer's not working, so you go to the other printer, and all of a sudden now, like 3 months go by, that printer doesn't work, and no one knows about it, and everyone's just bypassed it and kind of gone in a different direction, because in the moment we need to get done what we need to get done to make the client happy. And we're sprinting a marathon every day in insurance agencies, so that 5 minutes, or the dreaded, I heard this the other day too, the dreaded, well, yeah, if it doesn't work, then I call XYZ, it's managed services, and they need to then remote into my workspace for 2-3 hours, and I can't get my stuff done. You know? And it's like, it's this funny thing of like, slow down to speed up, or how many workarounds people do in agencies all day long that aren't always brought to the surface until it's like catastrophic, right?
Right. And look, I've met very few insurance agency owners or personnel that want to spend their time on IT.
Right.
They want to sell insurance. And I think, you do an amazing job of helping them with that function, which, if I were to get on a soapbox here, Kelly, that's what's missing with all the software that's out there, right? It's all great at automating the back office, and people invest in this stuff, but an insurance agency, first and foremost, needs to be a selling machine.
Yeah.
Right. And so I also get, hey, I don't want the IT guy to start working on things because I'm going to lose 2 to 3 hours of a day. So we run sort of a 24/7 operation. So what we'll get a lot of is exactly what you said. Hey, it's a problem. I can work with it, but I don't want my computer to be down. So, hey, just let us know if it's okay for us to connect in at 5 p.m. your time.
Right.
And we'll fix the problem while you're not around.
That's perfect.
Yeah. It's like turn down service at that hotel I was just at. It's awesome.
Right. Or it's like, couldn't there be a spare setup somewhere that you could work off of in the like, I always think sometimes agencies run so lean on certain things that, there is a super cost, in my opinion, of when your technology is not working. And my personal opinion on what I do is you burn your team out and they get frustrated because lo and behold, technology not working is one of the most frustrating things on the face of the planet, right? You want to like punch a screen. You also slow them down from a time management perspective. So now something that should take 5 minutes takes 10 because they're doing workarounds or whatnot. And then to me, the third thing that also does is it hurts your customer. Like they shouldn't have to wait longer for things. And I just see in so many agencies this technology piece being more like, I don't know, it's almost like a back burner when I feel like it's like
expense.
It's an expense.
And they don't see that it really produces income for them. And all they see it is an expense.
But there's no like counterbalance. This is how much it costs you in productivity, right? Like
exactly. And a book that had a big influence on my life when I was in college a million years ago was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And one of the things that guy Robert Pirsig, I hope I'm getting his name right. It was a famous book, again, a million years ago. And one of the things he talked about was fixing his motorcycle and just sort of the retooling cost of being interrupted. It's just not 15 minutes out of your day when you have a computer problem, right? It's the retooling problem of even if you jump from your desk to somewhere else, you have to get reoriented.
Right.
Not to get kind of off topic here, but you said I could.
Yeah, you're fine.
So that's what I think is so remarkable about having working from home. One of the things we did, we started our business in a frugal time, was we opened an office and we quickly closed the office, and we worked from home. And I think for us, or for me, it makes me much more productive. I don't have kids screaming in the house and they're all grown up. But it makes me a lot more productive because I don't get a lot of those got-a-minute meetings.
Right.
And those got-a-minute meetings are, maybe they're only 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it takes me like so much time to retool and get back into my process of what I was doing and reoriented me back to it, and they add up. So you can still have got-a-minute meetings on Zoom and Microsoft Teams, etc. But I think it's made us a more productive organization, being remote. I'm sure you have your own thoughts on it, but this is all we know, right? Is for the past 10 years, we've been a remote IT company.
It's funny. I think some people like working from home, some people like an office. It's not, I think some people think that they work from home better, but the stats don't always show that. Like some people prefer to work from home, but their productivity goes down. It's like, it's all very personal, I feel like. And then there's some people who just totally thrive with it. I've always been the type of person that likes to leave and go in the office, and I leave work and I come home and I can shut it down. Because I tend to be a bit of a workaholic. So living and working in the same place, although my office looks like a home, it's actually It's in a historical home that's zoned commercial, so it's cozy here. But it's an interesting dynamic. I think agencies are going to have to deal with this more and more to figure out what works for them.
I agree. But if I were going to the younger generation, everything
Totally.
that I've read is that they would give up their health insurance benefits, the great majority of them, to keep their work from home benefits.
I know. I always, my question, not to get like off topic, but we agreed it was fine. I understand the now of it, but I just think about the mentors I had in my life and the investment that people made into me.
That's a great point.
And I always am like, well, how does that, and yes, there's Zoom and there's other things, but how do I get called into that meeting where it's like, why don't you come into this meeting? It'd be good for you to learn that. Like, how does that happen? Or does this new generation really look like this is a job? Like, I guess from the time I graduated college, I was like, career, I've got to go make something of myself. And I want to know what Brad knows. Brad's a successful business. I want to spend time with Brad. And I just always had that. And I'm curious, like, how that works in a different world. I mean, the world will figure itself out, of course, but.
Well, but it also allows folks like us to meet each other, right? So even though we're not going to have the same experience, right, of us sitting down in that cozy office and all that stuff, which I agree with you is great. But there are just so many people I've been able to make relationships with because of this.
Sure.
And because of being remote, that one of my good mentors, he's in the Boston area, right? I physically met him once when I went out to sell them as a client.
Yeah.
And I haven't physically met him since then, but we have religious conversations. He's a very religious guy and a mentor for me. And anyway, it allows me to have these sorts of connections that I wouldn't have otherwise.
No, you're right. It's a good second half of it. It's like, I feel like I don't know. A blend is always probably the best way, right? Like if you could do a blended strategy of here and there, sometimes like being able to see people in person, it's an interesting dynamic. Like I said, I think the world figures itself out. Like you, to your point of people can hop on Zoom, the world will figure itself out.
My personal assistant has been my personal assistant for 8 years. I've never physically met her.
Sure.
It's crazy. And I planned to. When the pandemic happened, we were going to take a cruise that ended up in Manila in the Philippines. And then that all happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just say there's somebody out there that's like, I don't know if my IT vendor is that great. I'm not sure. I picked the local guy because he was the local guy at the chamber, BNI, because I kind of think sometimes that's how it happens. The more traditional format was you need someone local so they can come to your office and do the things, and right, like that's how it was done yesteryear.
Right.
So how do you recommend agencies go about finding the right partner? And I feel like too, as agencies grow and where we work is we work with high growth agencies. So you outgrow sometimes your tech partners. Is that correct?
Yeah, we hear that a lot, right? That our main competitor is what I call Joe down the street, who you described. They're on the softball team, they go to the same church,
right,
etc. And they're good people, right? But as we were talking about, it's really hard to be a general doctor. It's really hard to be a general IT professional, right?
Sure.
And you need to, it's a great question, and I'm not sure I have a great answer for it. But okay. I just think that an agency owner once told me this. He said, if you accept mediocrity, that's what you're going to get.
It's true.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of insurance agency personnel they accept mediocrity and they're okay with it. And the yin and the yang of my business is insurance agents are loyal. And it's great when we have them as a client, not so great when we'll do a free review for them and sometimes we'll find nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to this office in Denver back when we used to travel.
Yeah.
And the IT person was this kid with like 15 piercings and all this sort of stuff who answered their phones. And I'm like, oh, we're going to do an audit. We're going to find so much stuff. He was doing such a great job, better than some really big IT firms that we've done reviews for, where I said to the owners, he's great. If you ever want to get rid of him, I'll hire him.
Yeah.
And so we never know what we're going to get into when we find this, when we do a review, but that's one way to start. And there are lots of IT companies that will do free reviews. We try to focus it around cyber red compliance and security, things like that. But I think it's just sort of this feeling, right? That agency people will get that just, gosh, I want a second opinion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe something comes up or their IT company is frustrating the staff. Like when we come in, we find, and I know I've sent a couple of people your way when I've been at agencies and it's like, that's the challenge.
Yeah. I think a lot of agencies stay quiet though,
mm-hmm.
and they've sort of accepted that mediocrity.
Right.
But yeah, if an agency just is frustrated by their IT people, that they're not getting back to them quick enough, it probably means the IT business has some other structural issues going on.
Sure.
They haven't been able to hire people. A lot of IT professionals are great techs and lousy business people.
Like doctors.
Yeah, and I think I'm the opposite. I used to be a great tech 35 years ago, but now I'm a dinosaur. And I think I'm a decent business owner. And, that's helped us grow.
So I know we talked a little bit about this, but like somebody's in the market. You kind of touched on it on some of the other things you talked about, but like I'm in the market. What questions should I ask someone? Like, because this is my opinion in insurance. And like, I say this, if you're my client, I love you so much, but we probably had this situation happen where I tell you, stop getting sold by people, right? Like they meet someone at a trade show or they see something in a Facebook group and so-and-so's using this, so I have to use it too. And I always just say, I get it, but you also need to not get sold. You need to ask questions. You need to identify what your company you think needs and vet them out and compare and contrast and get a good feeling from people. And it's always like, I feel like sometimes we call them the insurance famous people. There's the insurance famous people and this person endorses this, so that's where I'm going to go. And you see this a lot with phone systems, right? So we try to encourage people like, let's just start with what you need, what you'd like to have, and what would be a dream list for you, and then interview people. But what do you think people should be asking?
Well, I think one question that they don't ask is, can my staff handle this tech? Meaning, I was at an ACT conference a number of years ago, and a guy stood up and said, we've tried 7 CRM products and all of them were worthless. And somebody else stood up and he said, yeah, I don't think maybe those CRM products were worthless.
Right.
Maybe there's a common denominator with all 7 of them that you tried out, and that's your people, right?
Yeah.
Or
your leadership.
So one thing I always tell my clients is I will stand between you and your checkbook. Mm-hmm. Before you write that check for that shiny new technology, right? That's mm-hmm. going to solve all your problems. I think we need to have discussion about that.
Right.
I also see a lot of IT companies make money on selling equipment. And I think that, number one, we're a 55 plus person IT company. We haven't had a physical server in 8 years. And so I see a lot of agencies get sold on servers. And I always tell them, hey, if you really want to buy a server, you're going to have to prove me the reason why. And we're probably the wrong IT company for you.
Sure.
Because we don't believe in it. And so I see a lot of agencies that are just so used to buying more and more hardware, and hardware will solve the problem. And geez, we have this 3-year retention policy, so we're going to just refresh every 3 years. And there are these new things like technology as a service, which is basically a lease to spend money on computer equipment for 3 years. So yeah, I mean, I think what we're able to do, and what I would suggest that agencies do, is an agency owner approaches us with, hey, I want to buy this phone system. And we may have clients that either tried that phone system,
right,
or are using that phone system.
And you know the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Right, that aren't on the refers list.
Right.
Where they're Bobby's best friend or whatever. And so we'll give them the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And I think people get caught up in features.
Oh yeah.
And maybe not the reliability of things.
Well, and I think too, like I said, they get, so like for me, when partners, and again, I try not to do this, we kind of say, I say no to more people than I say yes to, because I'm like, if we're just not a good fit, I'm married to you for a year. I don't want to be married to the wrong fit either. And I'm sure you probably have one of that same thing too. But when it comes to the technology side of things, like they sell them, and then it's, SaaS companies, it's software as a service. Like you could deal with the 1-800 number. There's no marriage, there's a contract, but people are living in separate houses. And so they'll tell you all the great things. And sometimes these tech partners, I'm saying all across the board, they oversell, because it's like, well, the next version is going to have this. It's like, but it does not today.
We call that vaporware.
Yeah. Or it's like, we do texting, but it's not built for multiple locations. Or it's like, yeah, you do texting, but in order to get that text message, you have to log into a separate system and be watching it all day, where the team's they don't have the capacity to do that. So to say you're doing texting is true, but it's not working, so I always look at it like you have to really vet your partners, because going back to the team, you'll burn them out. They won't use it, and then you'll be mad.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'll tell a quick joke. Bill Gates dies and he goes to meet his maker. And his maker says, well, we've never had somebody so wealthy, so philanthropic. So we're going to give you a choice between heaven and hell. So he says, well, I want to see them both. And so they show him heaven, and people are floating in clouds, they're eating grapes, there's opera music playing. And he's like, yeah, this looks nice. And then they show him hell, and it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, party, party, party. Bill Gates says, well, I missed my college years. I was building Microsoft. I choose hell. So
that's funny.
Snaps his fingers, so be it. And 2 weeks later, Bill Gates is met by his maker in hell. Bill Gates is on a rack. It's fire and brimstone. He's being whipped. Bill Gates looks at it as maker. He says, this is nothing like what you showed me. What is this? He says, we showed you a demo of hell. This is hell.
Oh, that's funny, actually.
And so salespeople for software companies are paid a lot of money to show you demos of hell, right? And
that's really good.
Never trust a demo.
That's funny.
Never trust a demo. See if you can actually use the product. really use the product for a considerable amount of time, at least a month. But a lot of companies, it's not possible to get that up and going. So I don't believe in demos of hell.
That's a good way to put it. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit, like, a lot of conversations we're having with agencies, prospects, et cetera. This whole, we touched upon it earlier, but work from home, right? I think people after the pandemic are much more open-minded to it, even if it's hybrid or some kind of, or the talent pool is so small where they are that they have to go there. And I think that this presents new tech challenges, right? So if I'm going down this pike, I did it during the pandemic out of necessity, maybe had not the best setup or not all the security we needed. What are things now that we've been living in a pandemic world for what feels like 700 years, but more like a year and a half? What are things you need to know if you're going to have remote staff? Like what has to happen, unrefutable, don't argue with Brad. These are things that you have to have if you have remote teams.
Well, what you want to not have is a server, whether that's an Exchange server or a file server in your office, right? I call it the drug dealer relationship, where the IT guy sells you the server and it feels really good, everything's great, and then it crashes and you will pay him anything to get that server fixed because you've got a bunch of people in your office now working. So, I mean, specifically, you need to embrace the cloud, in my opinion, securely, right? And we can talk about some of the security issues around the cloud, and there are plenty of them. But you need to embrace the cloud. And the technology specifically is Office 365, which is email and file storage and security through a product called SharePoint. And it's all bundled together. And what it means is wherever you go, whether you're working in the office or you're working outside the office, you have access to the files securely,
right?
And the current files wherever you're going. One of the things that we see a lot of, and we're big proponents of, that we run on, is Amazon Web Services.
Sure.
Which is, you literally move your infrastructure. So it's like you transport the PC that's sitting on your desk to the cloud, and you pay a fee to Amazon for that. But it means wherever you are in the world, you can connect to your PC in the cloud, have all access to all your applications and all your data securely. And what I mentioned to agency owners and personnel is that you can't afford $1 million firewall. As much as your IT company might want to sell you one, you can't afford it. Microsoft and Google and Amazon, they have the economies of scale so that they can put in security that you couldn't possibly put in. It has to be configured properly. It has to be set up properly. But yeah, I mean, that's where I would say you've got to be on a VoIP phone system, right? And we have a VoIP expert, even though we don't sell VoIP. But it's critical, right? That and you don't want your people giving out their mobile phone numbers.
Yes.
You don't want data sitting on your people's laptops or their home computers, et cetera, which their kids are playing on and downloading God knows what, which could be a virus, or it could be a keyboard tracker or keyboard logger. You don't want to be doing that.
Right.
So a lot of our agencies, we've moved them to Amazon Web Services. And it's the end of that cycle of buying hardware, where you can use a Chromebook, you can use a Mac, you can use these things that are zero clients that are literally this big,
Right.
that all they do is connect to Amazon Web Services and bring up your desktop there. So we see a lot of that, and we see some competition coming for Amazon with this, what do they call it? The Windows 365, which is they're just starting to really, in my opinion, compete with Amazon. And I think what's going to be good for agencies is that as that happens, the pricing is going to come down.
Yeah, and can you just give us a ballpark, right? Like, when I know we talked about costs, right? So what is it roughly, and if you want to give a range, cost per user to have great IT services? Like, what should agencies budget for this?
Well, so we charge $70 per desktop per month. And I usually tell people that we're pretty much in the middle. And I've been to conventions where they say budget between $50 and $100 per desktop per month. And I think that, we're very transparent about our pricing, right? And we've never raised it for existing clients. So we have existing clients that are paying a lot less. We raise it every year though, but they don't. I'm not even sure what you call this program, Brad program. you have it like that, but yeah, we bundle a lot of products and services and security that's built into it. One thing I'll tell your audience is the days of spending lots of money on antivirus are over with, in my opinion. Windows Defender or Microsoft Defender, which is included in Windows 10, is awesome.
Well, it's funny when we talk about cost, because I've been in the room when people talking about let's buy the server, and I'm like, please don't buy it. Please don't talk about that.
Right.
And you're willing to pay $12,000 for a server that needs a ton of maintenance, right? And has its other challenges, but then the $70 per person is like, oh, that's too much.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'll be insecure during that whole time.
Well, the way I like to equate it too is like, remember when agencies used to buy yellow page ads, right? They'd spend $25,000, $30,000 on a yellow page ad. When yellow page went away, they didn't reinvest that somewhere else for marketing. And they're like, oh, marketing is so expensive. It's like, you were buying a $30,000 yellow page ad. You didn't convert that money into anything. You bought a one-time website.
Well, I had a home that burned down in a wildfire here in California 3 years ago. And I remember my insurance agent is a friend of mine. I always tell my customers, if they want to write my insurance, they have to fire us as their IT vendor. And we do see a lot of clients or potential clients that are tied up with their IT vendor because they're a client of theirs. But anyway, that's a separate subject. But every year I would say my rates go up every year and I want it cheaper. And my insurance agent would say, Brad, you don't want it cheaper. And it's a good thing I listened to him, because 3 years later, some of my neighbors are still fighting with their insurance.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm here to tell you, independent agents do great work. And I'm lucky to service them. Because if it wasn't for my independent agent, I would be in a corner, asking for my mommy right now. And thankfully my agent pushed back on me every time I wanted to save money on my insurance policy.
It is interesting, right? Because insurance agents hate it when clients nickel and dime them. They want to be about coverage and service and value. And then when you do it to your partners, like a tech firm, it's like, hold up, you hate it when your customers do it to you. Why are you doing it back? Listen and find the value statement and then determine if you feel like that value is worth it for the price.
Yeah, I look, we're insurance for their IT systems. Their IT systems, if they're not operational, they're out of business. If they get hacked, they're out of business. And so we try to show the value that way. But also, we're unique in that and I don't want this to be a sales show for Archway, but we're unique that we have no normal clients, Kelly, only independent agents. And so, so the point is that we can bring a consulting piece into what we do. Don't buy this, get that, right? Get educated on this. Here's what other best practices agencies are using to sell more insurance. Here's some technologies that have been very helpful to them. And then having a tech team that knows all the agency management systems. And I wouldn't say all of them because there's so many of them now, but certainly knows the big two and knows a lot of the sort of secondary management systems there.
So my final question to you as we wind down here is, what should it look and feel like to work with a ridiculously amazing insurance tech partner? So if people are out there listening to this and they're like, I think my guy's okay, like paint the picture of what it should look like and feel like. So maybe this is a thing that's like, well, maybe it's not okay. Maybe I need ridiculously amazing.
Well, what I describe as ridiculously amazing is kind of like doctors, right? There's some doctors that are great surgeons, and there are other doctors that have good bedside manner that will treat you right, and you actually look forward to talking to them and all that sort of stuff. Well, I think IT people generally fall into one or the other category. They're either great tech people, and that's 90% of them, and 10% of them are great bedside manner. And so what we try to train in our folks and really enforce is always upgrade your tech skills and always upgrade your bedside manner, your personal skills. Address people properly, just don't make our clients seem stupid, because they're not stupid. Insurance is their thing. IT is not their thing. Treat them with respect. And so if your IT person is, you don't want to call them because they're going to be, just nasty to you, or, you've got, 6 hours of heck or hell awaiting you. That's when you don't have that ridiculously great IT experience. If you're waiting for IT help, right? We try to do everything as a first call support item.
First call resolution.
Right. So the person who answers the phone, they're not a tier 3 tech, but they're a tier 1.5 tech. And they're usually able to answer the problem. But if they're not, our hold times we try to keep them under 2 minutes. And we transfer to the tech that's available that can jump on and fix problems. But hopefully you're going to have far less problems, because if we're doing our job, you should have fewer things breaking.
That's awesome. So Brad, how can people find you if they're interested in learning more about Archway? They've got questions. And
Sure.
If I recall correctly, you said something earlier, and we've talked about it before, but you do kind of an audit. I think that's just a phenomenal place to start, right?
Yeah, we'll do a free review of your agency's security. We really appreciate your support, Kelly. You're just amazing in your marketing and yeah, I've been an admirer I've been stalking you. I know you're married and I'm married, but I've been stalking you for a while.
Well, if I recall, you're a HubSpot user as well, right?
Yes, we are.
So us HubSpot users tend to stalk each other's marketing quite a bit. Be like, what are they doing? What are they using? So I get it. So
my email is brad@myarchway.com. You can go to our website, www.myarchway.com. And you can also just call me direct, and that's 805-469-4510. And I'm trying to find it. Yeah, and this will start ringing. But I love having conversations with agencies. And, an agency will oftentimes tell me, gosh, I have a brother-in-law that I cannot fire who does our IT. And I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. Crazy Californian, I believe in karma, and the more that I give, the more that I get back. And yeah.
Well, and I will say this, I want to give Brad a little kudos. I go out to a lot of agencies, as you guys know, and there's been times where, there's concerns. Maybe someone gets terminated and there's concerns that they may be able to access things. And it's, and Brad has always risen to the occasion, even at like 7:00 at night, to talk to somebody. So all the things he's saying, I can vouch for. He's personally done that, not even for clients of his, but people I'm like, do you mind? And they need this help and they don't have the IT infrastructure we're talking about. So I want to say that Brad puts his money where his mouth is on what he's saying from the service perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. It's I really enjoy the industry and I enjoy your podcast. So thanks for having me on it.
No problem. Well, thank you so much, Brad. Everybody out there, check out Brad, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Hey everyone, so you're listening all about how not to become the next Blockbuster, which I hope is resonating with you. And one step in doing that is setting growth goals for your agency. I see a lot of agencies that just don't set goals because it's uncomfortable. You're not sure how to track it. What if you lose? Who's going to pay attention to it? And that's the thing we all have to kind of get through and get away from, because goals are incredibly important. One, to celebrate, and two, to understand what's working and what's not working. And many agency owners never set goals, so they're not sure where to start. And that's what we have with this process pack. For $200, you can go ahead and get how to set your goals. There's a calculator that we use that says, hey, this is where you are, this is where you want to be with retention and rate increases, this is what we need to do. And then how to roll them out to your team, how to incentivize your team to embrace goals, what to expect as you push your team to be more goal-oriented. But now is a great time to do this as we head towards the end of the year. What time other than now to start just getting everyone used to goals? It's right now. Let's do it. Let's not become Blockbuster, right? So check out our agency process pack, all about how to set those goals. And, we would love for you to check out our other process packs as well. Until then, go get your goals going, guys. And don't become Blockbuster. We'll see you soon.
All right. What did you think about this podcast with Brad Ruben? I thought it was great. It was insightful. I love Brad's perspective on things. And I think for every agency out there, technology is not going away. In fact, it's changing rapidly. And so you need to figure out a partner that makes the most sense for your team. But keeping your team efficient and effective has to be number one on your list of priorities. So if you're looking for a new managed services provider, I think you should reach out to Brad at Archway Computer Systems. Thanks so much, everybody.